Matter of when, not if, he strips Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their royal titles.
The right thing to do. I mean, the point was that we'd always criticised Charles for being hesitant and backing away from controversy, but I don't think it was Charles's decision in the end. I mean, it was technically, but of course he was forced into it, most likely by Prince William. I think Camilla also said this can't carry on.
That Tom Bower is also getting into. One of the reasons that he wants to leave the USA is because after the Andrew scandal, Harry is now fearful of what is coming for him.
The nightmare isn't that a royal title could disappear with one dramatic signature. The nightmare is that Prince Harry may be watching that title become worthless without Prince William having to strip a single word from it. Forget the explosive headline suggesting Prince William is secretly sitting inside Kensington Palace plotting some spectacular parliamentary execution of the Sussex titles. Because the reality being painted here is colder, quieter, and potentially far more devastating. Royal watchers may be waiting for Parliament, King Charles, and some historic decree to formally tear away privilege, but what if none of that is necessary? What if the doors can simply close, the invitations can disappear, the institutional protection can vanish, and the title can remain technically intact while becoming practically meaningless? That is the chilling possibility hanging over Prince Harry right now, because while Montecito continues fighting its public battles, an English courtroom has reportedly delivered exactly the kind of humiliation that could make any future royal rehabilitation dramatically harder. The legal confrontation with Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mail, suddenly became the center of everything. The ruling described in the source was presented not as some harmless procedural bruise, but as a devastating collapse for the case, with the judge rejecting crucial claims where sufficient admissible evidence had not been established. And then Tom Bower delivered the phrase guaranteed to send royal gossip into absolute overdrive. This is the beginning of the end. 4 words. That was all it took. Suddenly, this was no longer being discussed merely as another courtroom fight. It was being connected to reputation, money, royal access, and the terrifying question of whether one failed legal battle could become ammunition for permanent isolation. And told Meghan in no uncertain terms that once he's King William, they could well all lose their title and lose everything. That is where the story becomes explosive. Because the argument presented is that Harry entered the confrontation convinced his grievances deserved to be vindicated, only to emerge facing questions about evidence, credibility, and potentially staggering costs. Instead of the victorious David defeating the media giant, the picture described was almost completely reversed. Prince William would not need to chase politicians through Westminster corridors if circumstances themselves were already destroying the practical power attached to those royal connections. The possibility of an enormous financial burden only makes that picture darker, because reputational damage is one thing. Reputational damage arriving alongside gigantic legal expenses is something entirely different. On July 7th, the High Court decision described in the transcript became the moment around which the entire controversy turned. The fundamental message was brutally simple. Sincere belief is not the same thing as legally sufficient proof. That distinction may sound technical, but publicly it becomes dynamite when the person standing at the center is one of the most famous royals alive. Paul Dacre celebrated the outcome for Associated Newspapers as a victory for truth and free speech while delivering an intensely personal assessment of Prince Harry. Then Katie Nicholl pushed the discussion toward another uncomfortable reality. After years of expensive legal warfare, lawyers may emerge financially rewarded while the person driving the litigation carries the consequences. And those consequences could be enormous. Estimates discussed in the transcript placed accumulated legal costs at an astonishing $50 million, immediately triggering speculation about whether such exposure could collide with weakening commercial momentum. Charlotte Griffiths questioned the financial picture surrounding Harry as rumors circulated about another Netflix production agreement. The original Spotify relationship had already ended amid embarrassing public criticism. The memoir Spare represented a major but non-recurring payday, and the wider commercial machine was portrayed as struggling to recreate the extraordinary deals that followed the California move. Suddenly, the courtroom defeat was not sitting alone. It was connecting with everything else. That is precisely why Tom Bower's interpretation becomes so significant. A legal finding that something has not been proven does not automatically mean every underlying allegation allegation is false, but public perception rarely waits patiently for legal nuance. When someone spends years insisting evidence exists and a court concludes the required evidentiary standard has not been met, critics immediately attack credibility. And for Harry, credibility is not merely personal currency, it is commercial currency. Then the palace dimension enters the picture. Tom Bauer argues that the larger danger is not simply money disappearing into legal bills. It is the possibility that Prince William now possesses another powerful reason to maintain permanent distance. The comparison raised is Prince Andrew, not because the allegations are equivalent, because the transcript explicitly says they are not, but because royal isolation can happen gradually. Patronages disappear. Official appearances disappear. Institutional access disappears. The individual remains royal by blood while becoming increasingly absent from royal life. For 6 years, Harry and Meghan built their public identity around explosive interviews, private grievances, memoir revelations, documentaries, and an increasingly bitter separation from the institution they once represented, apparently believing some path toward reconciliation might eventually remain open. But according to Katie Nicholl, the possibility of Harry returning as a working royal is effectively finished, with the bridges between the brothers portrayed as burned beyond meaningful repair. William reportedly sees the repeated public disclosures, legal confrontations, and commercialization of deeply private family matters as something far more serious than temporary anger. Meanwhile, King Charles faces the almost impossible balancing act of being both a father and custodian of the monarchy, and every carefully controlled interaction now becomes another clue. When Harry returned to London seeking contact, the limited access and absence of royal accommodation immediately fueled speculation that the message from the institution could not have been clearer. Personal affection does not automatically restore official standing. That reality becomes even more painful when Harry arrives in Britain hoping to appear connected to royal life while possessing no official authority from the crown. William seemingly does not require Parliament to dramatically erase anything if access itself disappears. Remove the official platform, separate the individual from working royals, close the palace doors, and suddenly the ceremonial language remains while its practical significance fades. The irony becomes almost impossible to ignore. Harry once presented himself as escaping an institution that trapped others, yet the transcript paints a completely reversed picture. Lawsuits, commercial uncertainty, public skepticism, and family estrangement surrounding the man who supposedly escaped, while the future monarchy continues moving forward. Then comes perhaps the most emotionally complicated casualty of all, the Invictus Games. Once considered Harry's undeniable achievement and a powerful international platform for wounded, injured, and sick servicemen and veterans, the project now risks becoming overshadowed by controversy surrounding its founder. The approaching 2027 Birmingham event should be focused entirely on extraordinary competitors and their stories, yet Harry's recent British visit instead became consumed by courtroom headlines, security disputes, family tensions, and royal rejection. Kate Manzi recalled the mocking Dukes of Hazzard description attached to Harry and Prince Andrew because damaging headlines seemed to follow them. And suddenly that joke carries serious implications when corporate sponsorship and public goodwill are involved. Tom Bauer raises the uncomfortable question at the center of the crisis. What happens when controversy surrounding a founder becomes louder than the cause? Corporate sponsors want uplifting stories, not endless association with personal feuds. Centibel provides another warning in the narrative, with Kinsey Schofield highlighting fundraising difficulties as Harry's public image became increasingly divisive. There has been no official announcement that major Invictus sponsors have disappeared, and the Birmingham event remains scheduled, but the concern described is about what could happen if personal controversy repeatedly overwhelms charitable purpose. And just when the story appears incapable of becoming more complicated, attention turns toward the marriage everyone keeps predicting will collapse. Tom Bauer rejects that prediction completely. According to the argument presented, Harry and Meghan remain together because separation could weaken both sides of the commercial identity they created. Meghan Markle's worldwide prominence became inseparable from marrying Prince Harry, while Prince Harry has no obvious working royal position waiting in Britain if the American chapter collapses. Prince William represents a seemingly immovable barrier to restoration, making separation potentially devastating to the narrative built since leaving royal duties. Tom Bauer therefore describes something less like a fairy tale and more like mutual survival. Divorce could hand critics the victory they have predicted for years. Valentine Lowe and Tom Bauer would suddenly appear vindicated, while Harry and Meghan would confront the collapse of the story that their partnership represented liberation and reinvention. Staying together preserves the brand, separating risks exposing its weaknesses. consequences. And that brings everything back to the courtroom. The transcript's final accusation is devastating because it argues no secret palace conspiracy was required. Prince William and King Charles did not need to engineer the downfall described here. Harry's decision supposedly created the consequences themselves. Tom Bower calls the situation self-slain. Financial pressure, reputational damage, institutional isolation, and uncertainties surrounding Invictus all converge into one extraordinary question. If the title still exists on paper, but the palace access, official authority, institutional trust, and royal future behind it have disappeared, what exactly is left? Prince William may never need the spectacular title-stripping moment everyone keeps waiting for, because, according to this argument, Harry's own choices may already have accomplished something far more permanent, and the most frightening part is that the final consequences may still be unfolding.